What would you say if a cop sounded friendly, smiled at you, and got you to give up your rights in under 30 seconds? Because that happens every day, and most drivers talk themselves into trouble before they even know what's happening. The stop feels casual, but those normal questions are often the strategy that turns a simple ticket into a search, a roadside interview, or an arrest. Hit subscribe right now because you need these lines in your head before you ever see blue lights in your mirror. And tap like so you can find this again fast because your brain will not feel calm when it's your car on the side of the road. Here's what you're about to learn, and you need every part of it. You're going to learn why small talk during a stop is not always small talk. You're going to learn the exact sentence that stops you from handing over consent without realizing it. You're going to learn the one question that can expose whether the stop is over or whether they're trying to stretch it out. And you're going to learn what to do if an officer tells you to step out, because that moment catches people off guard all the time. Here's the reality. A lot of drivers think their biggest risk is speeding. It's not. Their biggest risk is opening their mouth too much, guessing wrong, or trying to be helpful in ways that destroy their protection. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the same pattern keeps showing up. Drivers are polite, nervous, and talking. Officers stay calm, keep asking, and gather pieces. Now let's talk about why this matters to you so much. A traffic stop is supposed to be about the reason you got pulled over. Maybe your tag light is out. Maybe you rolled a stop sign. Maybe you were speeding. But the common strategy is to make the stop feel like a normal conversation so you forget it is still an investigation. Most people have no idea how fast that shift happens. You hear, "Where are you headed? Where are you coming from? Anything illegal in the car? Mind if I take a quick look?" And because it sounds simple, you answer fast. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Every answer you give can be used to stretch the stop, test your story, or claim you looked nervous and inconsistent. That is why you need a plan before you need it. If you wait until the officer is standing at your window, you're already behind. The first thing you need to protect is your mouth. Not because you should be rude, because you should be smart. A lot of officers use friendly questions right after they get your documents. They already know why they stopped you. The extra questions are often there to see if you talk too much, change your story, or hand them a reason to dig deeper. Let me show you exactly what smart drivers do. You hand over your license, registration, and insurance if your state requires it, and then you keep your answers tight. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, here are my documents. I prefer not to answer questions." Word for word. Memorize that line. That line works because it is calm, short, and clear. You are not fighting. You are not insulting anyone. You are not making sudden moves. You are simply refusing to become the source of extra evidence against yourself. If you start explaining where you were, who you were with, why you're late, why your friend borrowed the car, or why you look nervous, you are giving the officer more material to compare, test, and challenge. Even innocent people trip over details when they're stressed. Your memory gets messy. Your voice changes. You try to sound normal and end up sounding unsure. Then that uncertainty gets treated like suspicion. Bad way? Most drivers say, "I'm just coming from my cousin's place." Well, actually from the store first, and I'm heading home unless I stop for gas. Then the officer hears a shifting story and keeps digging. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, here are my documents. I prefer not to answer questions." Then the stop stays narrower and your words do not become the evidence. Listen closely because this is critical. Staying silent does not mean refusing lawful identification. In some places, you may have to identify yourself. That part depends on your state and the situation. But phishing questions are different from basic ID. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when a simple stop starts turning into a roadside interview. There is even a big reason you should say your silence out loud instead of just staring ahead. In Salinas versus Texas, the court showed that just going quiet can get twisted later, so clear words matter. In plain English, if you want the protection, make it obvious. Say you do not want to answer questions. And if your state requires your name or documents, give those. Then stop talking. You also need to remember that nervous talking does not help you. It hurts you. When drivers feel pressure, they start trying to prove they are harmless. They laugh too much. They overshare. They fill silence because silence feels awkward. But silence is not your enemy here. Extra words are. Former prosecutors and defense attorneys both know this. Your cleanest stop is often your quietest stop. If the officer has a real legal reason to act, your talking will not fix it. If the officer does not have that reason, your talking may accidentally create one. That is why this first tactic matters so much. You are controlling the evidence you give away for free. Have you ever felt pressure to answer random questions during a stop? Tell me in the comments, because your story might help someone else stay calm. Now let's get to the sentence that can save your whole car from becoming an open container for government curiosity. This is the line too many people know in theory, but never say the right way in real life. The officer asks, You mind if I take a quick look? Or maybe it sounds even softer than that. You don't have anything to hide, right? Or, it'll only take a second. That is the trap. The question feels casual on purpose. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Word for word. Say it calmly. Say it once. Say it clearly. This is 100% legal. You are allowed to refuse consent. And you should. Because once you say yes, you have handed them permission that is very hard to undo later. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it creates a clean record. If the search happens anyway, your refusal still matters. It shows you did not agree. And that can become huge later if a judge has to decide whether the search was lawful. Bad way. Most drivers say, I guess that's fine, I've got nothing to hide. Then the search starts, your rights get weaker, and now every item in your car is under a microscope. Good way. Smart drivers say, Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Then you protect your position, and if they search anyway, they own that decision, not you. Watch what happens when you use the right line. The whole mood changes. The stop suddenly gets more real. Because now, the officer knows you understand the difference between a request and an order. That does not mean the search always ends. If they claim they have probable cause or another legal reason, they may still search. But your job is not to fight on the roadside. Your job is to make your position clear without resisting. If they search anyway, do not block them. Do not reach around. Do not argue with your hands. Keep repeating the same idea if needed. I do not consent to any searches. That's it. This comes straight from how consent searches work under Supreme Court rulings. In Schneckloth v. Bustamante, the court basically said a search can be valid if the consent was voluntary. Plain English, if you say yes, even in a stressful moment, that yes can open the door. So your power is in not giving that yes away. Here's the reality. A lot of people think refusing makes you look guilty. That is not how rights work. Rights that disappear when you use them are not rights at all. Your refusal is not evidence of guilt. It is evidence that you know where the line is. And there is another reason this tactic matters. Officers sometimes stack questions. First they get you talking, then they get a confusing answer, then they ask to search. If you already used the first tactic and kept quiet, the second tactic becomes much easier. You are not trying to talk your way out of suspicion. You are simply protecting your space. That is why these tactics work together. One keeps you from feeding the stop, the other keeps you from opening the car. The next tactic is the one that flips the pressure back where it belongs, because sometimes the officer keeps talking after the ticket should be done. Your documents are handed back, the warning is written. The traffic reason feels finished, but the questions keep coming. Hang on a second. You mind waiting? Just a few more things. This is where a lot of people get trapped because they do not know whether the stop is still legal or just lingering. Let me show you exactly what to say. You look at the officer and say this, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Those exact words, clean and simple. This line works because it forces clarity. The officer now has to either let you go or make clear that you are still being held. And if you are still being held, there should be a real legal reason. This is 100% legal. You are not being difficult. You are asking whether the detention is still active. That question matters because a traffic stop is not supposed to turn into an endless fishing trip just because the officer feels curious. Bad way. Most drivers say, sure, I can stay. What's going on? Then the stop drags on, more questions come, maybe a dog gets called, and your few extra minutes become a whole new investigation. Good way. Smart drivers say, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Then the officer has to define the moment and you stop volunteering extra time. Watch what happens when drivers never ask this. They sit there thinking they have to stay forever. They keep answering. They keep waiting. They think politeness means endless permission. It does not. The Supreme Court dealt with this in Rodriguez v. United States. Plain English, that case said officers cannot stretch a traffic stop longer than needed for the traffic mission unless they have more legal reason. That means the stop has a job. Once that job is done, the officer cannot just keep you there to go on a crime safari. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings, and it matters more than most drivers realize. Now be smart with timing. Do not bark this line 5 seconds after the officer reaches your window. Use it when the traffic part appears done, or when you can tell the stop is drifting into casual but endless questioning. Your tone matters too. Calm wins. Sharp attitude loses. Say it like you are asking for a clear answer, not starting a fight. And if the answer is yes, you are being detained, then stop there. Do not keep debating. If the answer is no, you are free to leave, then leave. Do not hang around. Do not restart the conversation. Do not try to get the last word. Your goal is not to win a speech contest. Your goal is to end the stop safely and cleanly. 90% of drivers do not know what comes next. If you're still here, you're already ahead of the crowd. So comment, "I'm still here," and stay with me because this part catches people the hardest. Now let's talk about the move that scares people into forgetting everything they know. The officer says, "Step out of the car." Your heart drops. You think that means you're done. You think they must have something huge. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. But you need to know this so you do not panic. An officer can often order you out during a lawful stop. That means refusing to step out can make things worse very fast. So your move is not to argue. Your move is to comply without surrendering everything else. Here's exactly what you say. "I will comply, but I do not consent to any searches or questioning." Word for word. Keep your hands visible. Move slow. Follow the order safely. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Why? I didn't do anything. You can't make me get out." Then the tension spikes. The officer gets more aggressive and you lose control of the moment. Good way. Smart drivers say, "I will comply, but I do not consent to any searches or questioning." Then you obey the lawful order while still protecting your rights. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it lowers danger without opening the door wider. You are showing you will not resist. At the same time, you are making your limits clear. That matters. Stepping out is not the same as consenting to a search. Stepping out is not the same as agreeing to questions. And stepping out is definitely not the same as admitting guilt. Pennsylvania v. Mims is the case people need to know here. Plain English, it means an officer can usually order a driver out during a lawful traffic stop for safety reasons. So do not waste your energy fighting that part on the roadside. Save your energy for protecting the parts you still control. Your words, your consent, your timing. And there is one more piece here you need to remember. If the officer starts asking more questions after you step out, your old rules still apply. You can still say you prefer not to answer questions. You can still say you do not consent to searches. You can still ask if you are being detained or free to leave when the traffic mission is over. In other words, stepping out changes your position, not your basic protections. That's why panic is so expensive. Panic makes you think the game is over. It isn't. You still have moves, and they still matter. Now put all of this into one legal picture so you understand why these tactics are so strong. Rodriguez Vivas United States says your stop cannot be stretched longer than needed just to chase unrelated suspicion without more legal reason. In 7th grade English, the traffic stop has a job, and once that job is done, they cannot keep you there just because they feel like it. Schneckloth v. Bustamante says consent matters. In plain English, if you say yes to a search, that yes can make the search legal even when you never should have agreed. That is why the sentence, "I do not consent to any searches," is so powerful. And Pennsylvania v. Mims says an officer can usually order you out during a lawful stop. In plain English, you may have to get out, but getting out does not erase your other rights. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when you use the tactics together. You comply with lawful orders, you stop volunteering information, you refuse consent, and you force clarity about whether the stop is still going. That is the full picture. So let me show you exactly how this plays out in real life. You're driving home at night. You get pulled over for a broken light. The officer walks up and asks for your license, registration, and insurance. So far, normal. Then comes the strategy. Where are you coming from tonight? Why are you in this area? Anyone else been in the car? You don't have anything illegal in here, do you? The wrong way is what most drivers do. You start explaining. You say you were at a friend's house, then you add you stopped for food, then you joke because you're nervous, then you answer 3 more questions you were never required to answer. The officer now thinks your story sounds loose. Then comes, "Mind if I take a look in the car?" And because you already feel trapped, you say yes. Now your night is not about a broken light anymore. Now watch what happens when you use the tactics. You hand over your documents and say, "Officer, here are my documents. I prefer not to answer questions." The officer tries again. You stay calm. Then comes the search request. You say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." The officer tells you to step out. You do not argue. You say, "I will comply, but I do not consent to any searches or questioning." You step out safely. After the warning is done and your documents come back, the officer keeps talking. You ask, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Now the moment is clear. Either you leave or the officer must own the detention and whatever legal reason comes with it. That is a totally different stop. Same road, same officer, same car, different outcome because you did not hand over your rights one sentence at a time. Next week, I'm breaking down what you should say when an officer claims they smell weed from your car. So subscribe right now because you do not want to miss that one. That claim changes everything for your stop. And if you don't know how to respond, you can lose control fast. So here's your recap, and you need to keep it simple in your head. First, give the required documents, then stop feeding the stop with extra answers. Second, if they ask to search, your line is, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Third, if the traffic job looks done, ask, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Fourth, if they order you out, comply safely, but keep saying you do not consent to searches or questioning. Here's the reality. The common strategy is not always force. A lot of the time, it is conversation. Friendly tone, small questions, tiny permissions, and that is exactly why it catches people off guard. When you know the script, you do not have to panic. You just have to remember your lines. Hit subscribe so you catch the next video on the weed smell claim and the drug dog setup. Smash that like button if this gave you a plan you can actually use under stress. And drop a comment telling me which exact line you're going to remember first. Stay safe, protect your rights, and keep your cool.